In today's video, we're taking a look at a couple of different articles suggesting some trade targets for the Toronto Maple Leafs ahead of the 2022-23 NHL trade deadline. Who will the Leafs look to add as they make a push to try to get closer to that Stanley Cup? Plus, we have a variety of NHL injury and roster move updates to talk about today. And Alex Ovechkin has tied Gordie Howe. We'll discuss his latest milestone coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk around the Leafs to take a look at today. But first up, breaking news tonight, the Alexander Ovechkin watch on goal number 801. It's taken place against the Winnipeg Jets and goaltender David Rittich. So Ovi is now officially tied with Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey, for number 2 overall in NHL history. So only one man has scored more goals in the NHL in its history than Alex Ovechkin. Of course, that's the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Ovechkin is on pace to likely surpass Gretzky's all-time mark, likely sometime in the next couple of seasons, as long as Ovechkin can stay healthy and continue to play at a similar level. I don't think he'll have any issues accomplishing that before the end of his contract. So certainly a very interesting and fun thing to watch. Ovechkin has continued to be a phenomenal player. I think you could already make an argument based on the eras and how things have changed and how the game has changed over the years, that if you do like an adjustment for goals based on the eras that these guys played in, I think it's fair to say that Alex Ovechkin is probably already the greatest goal scorer of all time. So certainly quite a feat. Goal number 801. We'll see if he can get 802. As I record this video, that game with the Caps and the Jets, it's not over. They are, I think, late in the second period as I'm starting to record. So you never know. Maybe by the end of this video, he'll have number 802 and be in second place all on his own. Look for an update on the pinned comment or something across the screen here that I can add once I'm doing the posting here of the video in YouTube in the next little bit. On to some other news from around the league. We got a variety of roster moves here as the NHL prepares to go into shutdown for a few days for the holidays. The Vegas Golden Knights have recalled a couple of players, including Braden Paschal and Pavel Dorofeyev. So obviously the Golden Knights have a lot of injuries, need a couple of guys called up. The Islanders have called up a couple as well, including young centerman Aatu Räty, and Porter Witherspoon also gets the call. Casey Cizikas is not able to go tonight, so Räty is expected to slot somewhere in the bottom 6, likely as a centerman. So we'll see. I know that game's already underway between the Islanders and the Florida Panthers. I haven't been able to see too much of it so far, just a few highlights, but nice to see him get the call up here for sure. Now, another development in that game as well, which could be possibly impactful on a longer-term basis for the Florida Panthers, as defenseman Aaron Ekblad is injured. He's left the game. He's not returned, and there is some concern that the injury could be a serious one. There was a skirmish. He went after Islanders forward Oliver Wahlstrom. I believe there was some contact around the goalie. Ekblad responded, and they got tangled up. And it looked like he might have popped his shoulder or maybe a hyperextension of some sort. We don't have a clear, definitive response from the team, just that he's not returned as of right now. And I believe that he's likely not coming back, considering that how long it's been already here. I don't know if the team has officially put out a statement saying he's done for the night, but it's, something that looks like it could be serious. Aaron Ekblad is a huge part of that blue line. And the Florida Panthers blue line, in my opinion, is a big part of the reason why the team is not having more success. Certainly, they made a huge splash picking up Matthew Tkachuk. That Uyghur and Huberdeau trade, I understand to a degree the sentiment behind the shakeup from GM Bill Zito. But by doing that, they did make their forward group is arguably as good or better than it was before, maybe even better. But the decor is not. The decor has been weakened. To me, the Panthers, I don't like the looks of their blue line at all. And when Ekblad, who's dealt with a lot of serious injuries the past couple of years, is not there, it's that much worse. He's a huge part of it. So if he's going to be out for any length of time, a Panther team that's only hovering around the 500 mark right now, not in a playoff spot, that's not where they want to be. And I do wonder what kind of impact this is going to have on the Panthers. So we'll have to wait and get an update from the team and see how things go. But I'm sure that's not what Aaron Ekblad wanted for Christmas, was another potential serious injury. The Devils are also going to be without young defenseman John Marino. He's also going to be out for probably a couple of weeks with an upper body injury. They're calling his scenario week to week right now. So with a few extra days off with no games, it'll help not miss as much as far as game action goes. But certainly, going to be missed on the back end as the Devils play their game this evening as well against the Boston Bruins. And they're currently trailing. I believe it's a 4-1 score. I believe in the third period, if I'm not mistaken, as I record right now. A few other items here around here. The Devils have also made another recall, likely due to this injury. They've recalled Nikita Okhotiuk. So see if he gets in action. And Florida Panthers also recalled Giovanni Smith. Of course, they picked him up just a couple days ago in that 3-team trade. And of course, he is in action tonight against the Islanders as well. And he had himself a little tussle with tough guy Matt Martin that I noticed in the highlights a little bit earlier as well. A couple other items for roster moves. The Maple Leafs have returned Mac Hollowell back to the Marlies. He was called up on an emergency basis, so he's no longer needed, so he's sent back. And the Pittsburgh Penguins have also sent down defenseman Mark Friedman down to the American Hockey League here as well. Of course, the World Junior Championships are getting closer to beginning underway. Some pre-tournament games taking place over the last couple of days. I know tonight is a pretty intense rival between Canada and Finland. That's taking place in Halifax. The World Junior Championships, of course, get underway coming up in a couple days' time on Boxing Day, December the 26th. Take a look out for a video coming from me on this channel probably sometime tomorrow with a full World Junior Championship preview and some top players. I'm going to also do a video on some top players to look out for in this tournament as well. The 2023 NHL Draft is looking like it's going to be a really deep, really solid draft with some pretty high-end, potentially elite talent. Starting with Connor Bedard, the consensus number 1 overall selection. And we'll see lots of guys, including Bedard, at this tournament to get a glimpse of the future. So I'll have a string of videos, like I said, covering that in the coming days here, since it's getting underway in just a few days' time. Like I said, I'll likely be doing a preview video looking at all the teams. I'll probably do a separate video of some of the top players to watch out for as well. And we're probably going to do another video over the Christmas break as well, looking at the 2023 NHL Draft. So even though there's holidays coming up and there won't be a lot going on in the NHL, we will focus on the World Junior Championship Tournament, and there'll still be content posted here every day, including Christmas. I generally take Christmas Day off from recording, so I will likely have some content made up ahead of time regarding the World Juniors that I'll post on Christmas Day, but they don't worry. I will be taking that day off to spend with family and loved ones and not spending any time making videos, because there really won't be any news in the world of hockey anyhow. Now, on to the trade section of the video. Today was a busy day when it comes to The Athletic as well as Sportsnet, looking at some articles around some potential Toronto Maple Leaf trades. And of course, the Leafs have also been getting a lot of play in the media as well, between different radio channels, Sportsnet and TSN Radio as well. A lot of insiders focusing on the Leafs. Of course, the Maple Leafs are having a phenomenal season right now. They beat the Lightning the other day pretty handily, which is, something good for their confidence, considering that they lost to the Lightning in the playoffs last year. And for them to come back now and to beat them, not only beat them, but to beat them handily the way they did, I think will be a good boost for them. But one of the articles is more from a Vancouver perspective, talking about how the Leafs could be a player for Bo Horvat and his services, where he's likely going to be traded sometime in the new year before the NHL deadline in March. And then, of course, like I said, there's also a Sportsnet article from Luke Fox looking at a variety of trade targets that they could be focusing on, including some forwards and a few defensemen that we're going to talk about here. And Bo Horvat's on his list as well. Now, from the Vancouver perspective, essentially from what they're kind of hearing in Vancouver media and the NHL insiders, it sounds like the Vancouver Canucks, assuming they do trade Bo Horvat, they don't want a future-based package. They don't want just a bunch of picks and prospects that are not established. It sounds like they would really like to get back a young established prospect, or at least a prospect that's more established, maybe a young centerman, preferably somebody who can play a two-way game. Probably looking at a first-round pick in there as well, or at least a higher pick and some sort of a future-based package, but at least one solid player for the short term who can be on the roster. Now, when the Leafs, it references a couple of pieces here on the Athletic article that they might want, one being defenseman Timothy Liljegren. The Canucks blue line could use some help. The right side would be preferable, especially if they can move on from Tyler Myers in the next little while, and Liljegren could be an excellent fit for them. There's no denying that fact. Also goes on to talk about top prospect Matthew Knies. That would likely be a big ask from the Canucks side of things. Now, we've heard from multiple NHL reporters and insiders that the Leafs really don't want to trade Matthew Knies. And I understand why. He is a young, real promising looking prospect here. They'll probably be more willing to trade Nick Robertson than Knies would be my guess. My guess is that Knies is somebody they want to sign when his college season is up and maybe have him for the playoffs as well. Maybe he could jump into the Leafs roster and kind of the same kind of effect as a young, offensive juggernaut to throw in there, like Cole Caulfield joined Montreal before their push in the playoffs in the bubble season. So, it's certainly possible that Knies could do that. It'd give them an extra offensive weapon. May not get a regular, in there every game, every shift, but certainly somebody that can be a part of the future for sure and have at least some kind of an impact later into the season. So to be honest, considering what they've seen from Nick Robertson, I think they like Robertson as well. But I think at this point that if they had to pick between the two prospects, I think they'd pick Knies to keep and they would move Robertson if it meant getting a player they felt put them in a position to possibly win the Stanley Cup. Now, we've talked about Ryan O'Reilly being a trade, a trade candidate that they're looking at. And have discussed, we have information from Pierre LeBrun of TSN in The Athletic recently saying that he believes the Leafs have definitely discussed O'Reilly. He didn't indicate that it sounded like there was any kind of serious trade talks or, they may have made an inquiry around a potential availability, like a tire kicking scenario, but certainly no serious talks have taken place at all between the Leafs and the Canucks, or the Blues, at this point. And we don't believe the Leafs have inquired on Horvat with Vancouver either. This is just something that these articles are suggesting that they think the Leafs and Canucks should consider doing. Now, O'Reilly being a strong two-way forward, Horvat is also a strong two-way forward, but the way he's playing this year, he's going to give you a lot more offense than O'Reilly would. So certainly, I'm not sure that Horvat would be able to be a long-term fit with Toronto. I don't think they'd be able to afford this contract. They've got enough money tied up under big-time players that are, between the contracts of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. I don't think they can afford another, $8, $9, $10 million player, whatever he's going to end up getting. But he could be a fit for a playoff run, and then he could hit unrestricted free agency after. I don't think the Leafs are going to be too worried about long-term. They want to win, and they want to win now. So it makes sense to me that Horvat very well could be a player that they target. The big question here, though, and one thing the Athletic article covers from the Vancouver perspective, is they just don't know that the Leafs are going to have enough to really make the Canucks want to say yes to a trade with them. I understand why Horvat would be of interest to them. It's difficult to say, right? Now, a trade package on a guy like O'Reilly might be a little bit less. They could probably negotiate that to be a lower return, given the fact that O'Reilly's not playing at the level of Horvat this year. It's just that simple. Now, the Sportsnet article also talks about some other players, including some that we've touched on before, including Tyler Bertuzzi. It talks a little bit about Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, although I believe they're pretty much pipe dreams, and I don't see that really coming together at all. To be honest, I think the kind of player that they could use would be a guy like an O'Reilly or a Horvat, somebody who could give them strong two-way play, a sulky type of player, but also give them some good offense. They probably would have to move out somebody off the roster to make the money work, so it's probably going to end up being a guy like Alex Kerfoot, for example. Maybe a Liljegren if they're getting a high-end player. I don't know if they really want to trade Liljegren. They might have to consider it. And then, of course, a prospect like a Knies or a Robertson, right? So it's really difficult to say. Like Bertuzzi's another guy in Detroit. We heard from NHL insiders that they may prefer somebody who plays the wing. But the good news here is that if they do get somebody who's a natural center, it doesn't mean that center or one of their other centers couldn't play the wing. You can never have enough centermen. Now, depending on who the Leafs end up getting, if they get a guy like Horvat or a player like Bertuzzi, who's not quite as expensive as some of these guys, and if money's retained on the other side to knock that price down, then certainly they might be able to get themselves a defenseman as well. And the article goes on to talk about maybe Shane Gostisbehere in Arizona being a potential fit and a good candidate, maybe Gavrikov in Columbus. It goes on to talk about Luke Schenn in Vancouver and bringing him home as well. Maybe is it possible they could do a Horvat and Schenn, dual trade here, multiplayer deal from Vancouver to the Leafs. That would be interesting for sure between Vancouver and Toronto. They get their defenseman, or homecoming for Luke Schenn, or at least, homecoming in the sense of where he started his career. Horvat, could it be Liljegren and Robertson or Nyes in a first-round pick? Maybe something else like a Kerfoot. That could be a really, you could end up having, 4 to 5 actual roster players and 1 or 2 future assets involved, and that could turn into a pretty substantial blockbuster trade. That would be absolutely huge. If the Leafs and the Canucks did want to talk, the Leafs could do one deal and get everything they need in one trade, and that certainly sounds pretty interesting and certainly intriguing to discuss further. I mean, if you're a Canuck or a Leaf fan, what do you think of doing a deal with Vancouver and Toronto here, having Horvat and Schenn go to the Leafs? The Vancouver Canucks likely in that scenario get maybe a defenseman like Liljegren. Maybe they get a young player like a Nick Robertson. I think Robertson would be what the Leafs would push for. Maybe a first-round pick, maybe an Alex Kerfoot. That might be of interest. I'm not sure if that would be enough from Vancouver's side to get it done, but it certainly could be that, and maybe something else. I don't know. It's really difficult to say how the trade market is going to line up this year at the deadline and what the price tags are going to be like. Some of that will depend, too, is if the Canucks retain any salary. Certainly, if they're going to retain salary, they're going to expect more in return. So let me know your thoughts on those potential deals between the Canucks and Leafs or other trade targets that the Leafs should be looking at. Let me know how you think this could play out for Toronto. Many feel that this is an important year for Toronto, as I mentioned before. They need to really go for it this year. Like I said, Matthews' contract and Nylander's contracts are eligible for extensions this coming season. We don't know that we're going to see big gains in the cap for a few more years down the road. And really, in the case of Matthews, to me, it's important that they win now and make some big progress to make sure that he wants to resign and he wants to stay. We don't have any reason to suggest right now that Matthews is gone or going to be gone from the Leafs, but I would be concerned if they have another first-round exit out of the playoffs this year, that maybe he might not be sure about signing long-term. You got to wonder what his thoughts would be. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.